Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on October 29th, 2022 at approximately 2:20 p.m. PST. I thought I'd do things a little differently today, as it were, and talk about, well, quite frankly, alien technology and the connection between it and accelerated healing. Oddly enough, they really are connected. But in order to do that, and do understand something very important here. Okay. The thing is of the utmost importance is I am not actually trained in modern science. Okay, my entire background in science, if you look at clinical testing, my entire background, like the furthest I got was grade 8 basic chemistry. Okay, basic chemistry, basic physics. I think I got to grade 9 in basic physics. Okay. That said, what I have come to understand is that the whole 9 yards is connected. And what I'm looking at discussing today is how that connection works. Okay, and yes, it also applies to alien technology, and this is why. We take a look at the starting point. Now, we are told on the one hand we have to die of old age. Okay, now the funny part there is the same scientists that have come to the conclusion that you will die of old age have also come up with the idea, that every cell in our body, and they do say every cell in the human body is replaced every 7 years. Now, if you think about the rationality of that, if every cell in the human body is replaced every 7 years, then how is it that you can die of old age? Because the oldest any part of your body could possibly be is 7 years old. Now, we can take a look at the religious side and go, God made man in God's image. This is outside and inside, meaning you don't have to necessarily die. However, there's a lot of things against that. Okay, the amount of toxins that go into our system, not based on what you're eating, based on what you're breathing, based on what you're believing, based on what you have been taught to accept. Okay, now the reality of that is I'm not expecting, quite frankly, to live forever. However, I do know for an absolute certainty, based on my own memories, I've been here on Earth multiple times, and before Earth even got here. But here's the baseline connection. Okay, when you take a look at the world the way it is, okay, when you take a look at the world the way it actually is, the only real functional difference between your life and between picking something up, picking up something that's right beside you, or picking up something on the other side yeah, we're tilted down there, you're not going to be able to see that much, are you? Okay, the only difference between touching your hands and between picking this up this way, and I can't do this right now, so let's not go there. But the fundamental difference between picking something up that's sitting in your hand and reaching over and grabbing it from over here, and I really do wish I could remember how to do this. Picking it up with your hand being over here, it is still only one molecule to the next. Okay, all you're doing is sending a signal from one molecule to the next one and relaying it. It is the exact same method that is used to heal your body. You send one, or to even function, you send a signal from one cell to another one. Okay, and this is why I say it's all connected. But you've got to be willing to accept the fact that it's possible. If you will not even accept that, you're going to run into troubles. Okay, So when we start looking at, now I'm going to name a couple of things that we're going to look at. Okay, and no, unfortunately, I don't exactly have an art show for you here, and that's probably a good thing given my art. Okay, I have explained to people about something called the OTE drive, the oscillator densification of the tri-transtemporal equipolarity. Okay, now what this is a method of taking the existing world, the simple transition of one element to another, of electrons moving in space between molecules, or between atoms rather. Okay, and understand, if you've got two atoms, okay, the space in between these two, the space in between these two atoms is full of something. Now, granted, modern science cannot actually explain this. Not yet. Okay, from the information I gathered, Einstein was one step away from proving the existence of the multiverse. Now, this is something that I cannot explain mathematically. I can tell you it's absolutely on the money and that he was on the right track, but there is no way in today's world that I have the knowledge of Terran mathematics and Terran sciences to be able to explain it. What I can tell you is that when you can accept the fact that 1 + 1 = 3, and this is not a mathematical configuration. Okay, let me show you something here. And like I said, I am not an artist by any stretch. Okay, so let's just take a look at this. We'll tear this off. And you're going to have to just work with me where it comes to art. Because let's face it, art and I just don't get along. You'll understand that momentarily. Heck, I can't even get my hands to work here. There we go. So I show you something here. Now we're just going to call this, okay, that is just simply an atom, a null atom, okay? Now, when we take that and we add one electron, okay, one electron, you're now looking at a helium or at a hydrogen atom, okay? Now, the funny part about it is that when we're doing that, okay, science has already proven that electrons will leave their base atom. Okay, and they do this randomly, seemingly randomly. But here's the thing. Okay, we're just going to do this. And like I said, we're just going to have to forgive my wonderful artwork here. So we take two hydrogen atoms. Okay. Now, when you take a hydrogen atom and you remove this electron, okay, this atom becomes a null. It has no electrons to it. It's got no functionality from that standpoint, except filling the space between the other atoms. But what happens to that random electron? It travels along and runs into a second hydrogen atom, one electron and the atom. Okay, but the second electron joins, and now we have a helium atom. Now, pardon the artwork. Okay, but now we have a helium atom. Now, bear in mind there are literally there are more than trillions of these things. Okay. Good afternoon, Joe. Glad you can make it. Yeah, where it comes to that, I don't blame you for that. I did find, what the heck is it called? I don't have it here. Ibuprofen works like a charm. I found another one that works like an absolute charm where it comes to pain. Because ibuprofen, for me, didn't do that much. But there is a back and muscle relaxant put out by life. Okay, it's got a green label. I forget what the actual medication is in it, but it works like a charm on muscles, at least for me. Which, by the way, I'm not really a great medical marker. So we have your hydrogen atom, and this happens with every atom that's out there. Okay, all the way through the periodic table. Now, I have no idea what their modern count is. Okay, but every time a hydrogen atom loses an electron, it becomes a null, and this is the primary fluid, if you will, or primary energy between atoms, and it is this that is the backbone to the OTE drive. Now, here's the neat little part about it. See if I can get my hands to work at all, which apparently is not a real great thing here, but we'll see what we can do. It would be nice if my hands were working even a little bit, so I didn't have to fight with this so long. Now, let's take a look at the electron. An electron travels along. There's the electron there, and I'll show you this in just half a second. Okay, but as it travels along, as it travels along, the electron, this little round thing here, creates a shock wave in front of it. Now, if you want to see this, take a look at water and watch it happen. Okay. So that electron travels along through this null space, because I don't have a better word for it right now. And like I said, I am not a scientist by any means. But it creates a shock wave in front of it, and it creates a drag or a tail, if you will, behind it, pulling more space along. Now, the way the OTE drive works is it picks up the energy here that is created by this shock wave, runs it through its own system, okay, thereby making the engine run faster. But you have to flip it around a little to catch the back wave to slow things down, the fractal inversion. And again, I'm using the terms that I know. I do not know if these are terms that are covered by other people. Okay, but this same principle is exactly the same thing that we use in order to heal the body. Okay, because all you have to remember, now people will tell you, the doctors, the people that have been trained will tell you that the cells don't regenerate, that nerve cells don't regenerate. Well, here's the problem with that. They've already told you that that when it comes to the cells in the human body, every one of them will be replaced inside 7 years. Each organ is replaced at a different rate, granted. Okay. But we already know that every cell is replaced, so whether or not they regenerate or not is not a relevant concern to speak of. But what you do have to realize is that every single cell in an organism has a perfect blueprint to a perfectly healthy configuration. What's missing is our belief and our acceptance that this can be altered. That you can regrow missing pieces, or that you can actually regenerate nerve damage. And yet it happens all the time. Okay. Now let me get to this. In all fairness, Joe, it's not so much I don't believe in coincidences. I do not believe that everything is preordained, as it were. Okay, it just isn't quite that simple. You can call it a coincidence if you'd like, or synchronicity. Every little detail is not planned out. So, there are a lot of different terms for it. I don't buy into the idea of coincidence per se, But I certainly do not strive and do not claim to explain the whole 9 yards of it. By modern definition, I do not need that. By modern definition, coincidences happen just at random. Now, the reality is, in my opinion, things don't happen at random. Somebody, usually the corporeal entity that is aiming at making it happen, or the soul, take your pick, okay, is making a choice. And if two people, for instance, make a choice to go to the same place, okay, then you might call that a coincidence that they got there. Okay, there's any number of ways. Now, I don't know how most people see coincidences. I look at it and go, okay, it happened. I don't look for a label for it personally. What I do, and what I have come to understand, is people have been taught that you cannot control your own life. Things are set, they should happen this way, they are predestined, etc., etc. This I categorically do not agree with. Okay, things are not predestined to happen. Okay, now I talk about accelerated healing. I cannot claim to be a Reiki master, because the reality is I've never been trained in Reiki. This does not mean I do not know how to accelerate my own healing and that of others. Okay, but it comes to a situation where you find yourself in a position, find yourself face to face with somebody who may be able to connect the dots for you. Whether you want to call that a coincidence, or whether you want to call it synchronicity, serendipity, happenstance, put a label on it. I like the way that Shakespeare put it. Okay, when he turned around and said, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." Hi, voice. How we doing? Bad news for you. Hi, voice. Although that's a cute thought, I don't actually have a garage. I actually live in an apartment building. However, have I seen motherships? Absolutely. Have I seen different, and am I here to convince anybody of it? No. I will tell you, there are some ships where you cannot get into the engine room. Like a human could not, without assistance, get into a Srazazian starship's engine room. Primarily because of the fact that you can't turn the handle. Okay, humans will not get into a Korlock ship at all. At least not survive. Because a Korlock ship is literally run by bioelectrics. Korlocks are complete shapeshifters. They have no solid form. Okay, but when we're looking at the link between modern science and accelerated healing and advanced science, okay, it literally is all connected. It all works on the same principle. One molecule sending a message to another molecule, and so on down the road. This is why when you're talking about something like psychokinetics, okay, all you're essentially doing is sending a message from these fingers, if you will, from this hand, to reach out and grab something on the other side. And it's just one molecule to the next. It's the same as it is literally just one molecule from your brain to the next, all the way down your hand, to get it to physically pick up a thing and pick up an item. Now, in this case, we're talking about paint. Okay, so we're talking about just one molecule to the next. That's it. Okay, now the thing you can do with molecules, once you understand that, okay, is you can do things like make the air solid, okay, or make a physical object disappear right in front of you. And how is that done? It's done by vibrating the molecule faster than the corporeal body can see it. Okay. Now, this is where I run into a little bit of a snag. People keep talking about entities going to a different dimension, to the fourth, the fifth, the seventh, whatever. Okay. Now, this may just be an issue of an issue of terminology for me. Okay, when I think dimension, I'm thinking height, weight, that sort of thing. But when we talk about vibratory rate, okay, if you look at a solid object, it vibrates at a certain level. Okay, however, now, if I move it slowly, you can see it easily. Okay, you can track it very simply back and forth. There's no problem. Okay, let's do it this way. That's easier. Okay, you just move it back and forth. It is vibrating at a very small level. Now, if you watch the end of the pen, the blue end of the pen, when we're talking about accelerated speed, okay, try watching, when I'm moving that fast, try tracking it through the transition. It gets blurry. Okay, and that's the fundamental difference. And this is why I said it may be just terminology. Maybe this is what people are referring to as different dimensions. I know of 12 different dimensions. Okay, but here's the kicker to it. A three-dimensional item cannot fit in two-dimensional space. It would literally tear it apart. Same as a two-dimensional item would end up being put into three-dimensional space, would be torn apart. Now, do understand something very important here. This picture, okay, this is paper, this is felt pen. These are not two-dimensional constructs. They look two-dimensional, but they are not two-dimensional. They are actually three-dimensional because there is depth to them. Now, it's very difficult for most corporeals I've run across to actually wrap their brain around this. But when something vibrates fast enough, okay, and I cannot move my hands that fast, okay, not right now. But if an object moves fast enough, it will mesh, it'll sink between itself and come out. It'll pass right through it and through the other object if they are at an off sync. Now, an obvious example of this is sometimes if you're walking in the mall, sometimes you'll see people that look like they're weaving along for no functional reason. The reason for that many times is that you're looking at somebody that is witnessing other physical bodies in the way. Good afternoon, Kosan. Hope I got the pronunciation there right. Glad you could join us. Many times people will see things that are not physically visible. They're vibrating too fast for the standard person to see. This does not mean they do not exist. Okay, now when I started talking about the OTE drive, okay, what they do is they're picking up, and where did my picture go here? Of course, artwork is not my strong suit. We're talking about picking up the energy off the shockwave, okay, and moving that through a mechanical system, okay, well, more to the point, it's through an electronic system to generate thrust out the back end. So they pick up the shockwave, transfer it through the system, and create thrust. Now, this is something that will take maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years down the road. I don't know. Okay. Hey, Nightmare, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Somewhere down the road, mankind's going to figure out how this works. Now, we have to realize that mankind, that the off-worlders, the ancient races, aliens are not the ones giving mankind all of the information. Yes, mankind is taking a look at some of the tools that have been built, some of the ships that have shown up. They are absolutely redesigning them or reverse engineering them. Absolutely. But they did something, from what I gather, when it came to Michelangelo. I don't remember if it was Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci, but one of them invented the helicopter way back in the Middle Ages. Now, the reality is they took a look at it from the oak leaf, from what I gather, from the way the seed drops. Okay. And this side of it is where you end up with this new little creation in the design for the helicopter. They did not have the technology back in their time. They had the blueprints, they knew how to do it, but they did not have the equipment. Okay, we take a look in ancient Egypt. They used to have a piece of medical technology, okay, that would enable them to operate inside a human body without breaking the skin. And the way they did it was they built a machine that modified them in the vibratory rate of the body they were trying to work on. Thank you so much, Nightmare. I do appreciate that. They figured out how to take that technology, and we are talking back in ancient Egypt. Okay, when they weren't supposed to have technology. Bad news, they did. So the ancient Greeks, by the way. But they built a medical machine that enabled the doctors at that time to operate inside the human body without breaking the skin, without cutting the skin. Okay, now this sounds like science fiction, but then most of my life has been basically science fiction. Okay. That's what I like about some cartoons there, Nightmare. And Nightmare is just saying, it was Da Vinci that invented the helicopter. She saw it in a Futurama comic, cartoon. It's a great cartoon, honestly. I just don't watch it. Okay. Now, with that in mind, when we take a look at the designs that were built back then, they found in ancient Greece. Now, mankind has reached an incredible level of technological superiority over some things. Okay, you take a look at termites. Okay, termites build phenomenal mounds. Okay, that they live inside. They figured out this other thing. They actually cooperate. Now, picture what's going to happen. We have 8 billion people on the planet. Now, 40,000 years ago, and I cannot prove this one either, 40,000 years ago, mankind had evolved to the point of physical manifestation. Good afternoon, Elaine. I'm glad you could make it. When 40,000 years ago, we had evolved to the point of being able to physically manifest anything we desired in our hands. Most of technology, most of our material world was maintained by mental cohesion. In today's world, most of our stuff is stored on electronic database. Now, the funny part there is, granted, mankind did not have we did not have the computers the way people understand them today. But way back, they used crystals to store energy, to transfer energy. They can still be used in today's world. Good afternoon, world. Glad you can make it. The way I look at the whole 9 yards, okay, is we have to realize that people are we are capable of putting together a much better, a much more cooperative and prosperous world. Okay, but we have to start working together. We've got to stop looking at this and going, how can we find ourselves being different? How can we separate ourselves more? And that is exactly where you're right, Alpha. Glad you could join us. There was a story when I was growing up. There was a story called A Wrinkle in Time. Okay. Where instead of trying, what it described was, instead of trying to fly from this point over to this side of the paper and traveling all this distance, instead of making that journey, fold space itself and make the 2 points the same place. Now you're at the other end. Much quicker travel. Very much the way that a wormhole works. Yeah, hate to tell you this. I hate to tell you this, world. I don't think that quite works the same way. Son of a beehive. That was not what I wanted to do. I just spilled my drink. Not a nice thing. At least it missed my computer, and that is a good thing. However, see, this is what you get for drinking too much. And no, there is no rum or rye in this. But that was a near disaster. And that is why you should always put a lid on your bottle. But see, the one thing you have to realize, and before we get thank you so much, world. The one thing that the people have to realize, we keep talking about time travel. And I'm not going to get into that today. I'm going to have to take the time to really lay that out properly for people. Okay. Because yes, time travel does work. Going forwards, not going backwards. Okay. But right now I'm looking at one little issue here, and I'll get to time travel at a different point and explain as best I can why you can go forward in time, but you can't go backward in time. If you actually watch Endgame, the Avengers Endgame, Bruce Banner actually explained it beautifully. Okay, as to why it doesn't work that way. The neat little part about it is what we understand. You're talking about the laws of physics here, Alpha. Okay, the laws of physics are not, it's not that they are wrong. The problem is that the laws of physics, the laws of chemistry, the laws of biology are not complete. They are reasonably accurate, but they are not complete. And therein lies the problem. But we are taught to disregard anything that doesn't add up to our way of looking at things. Okay, when you're looking at passing a message, people talk about change being a problem. It's frightening, it's scary. It causes problems. It's difficult. And yet, every microsecond of every day, your body changes without you actually writhing in pain, I hope. Some of you may be in static pain all the time. I understand this. Okay. So with that in mind, yeah, and that's the thing. I get a kick out of it because they're still finding new elements on the period that they've added to the periodic table. And I really don't know how many different elements there are at this point. Actually, it's funny. I'm bringing that up. And this is one thing about actually being able to function on this. I'm just going to ask a neat little question. Sorry about that. Just ask how many elements are in the periodic table of elements. Let's see what Google comes to say. Now they're saying 118. I have no idea myself, but that's what they're talking about. I will tell you this, though. Okay, from what I've seen, okay, and can I give you any definitive answer as to the total number? No, but I have been told that some of these races have found as many as 240 elements in the periodic table of elements, just not the ones that Terrans have. Okay, there are a staggering number of new elements that mankind still has to find. Okay, and like I said, these are all things that can be connected. But the reality of it is, once you start to understand, there's two things you've got to wrap your brain around, and they will help immensely. How are we doing, Nathan? Glad you could get here. And Black Dragon, I see you've arrived. You know, the neat part, basically, essentially, Alpha, you are sort of bending space and time. But in all fairness, the problem isn't that you're bending it. The fact of the matter is that Terrans do not understand it as much as they should. It's just that when you start looking at bending time, bending space, what you're actually doing is learning to ride the waves. You're learning to surf, if you will. Most humans cannot stand on a surfboard. Okay, at least not if it's in the water. How we doing, YJ? So once we start to understand that our understanding of the sciences are extremely limited, once we get to that point, once we get to that point, we have to look at it and go, okay, the more I know, the less I know. And the way that works is this. As you discover more, as you remember more of what's going on, you'll realize how much more potential there is. Okay. And this is why, comparatively, the more you know, the less you know. And as long as you keep that in mind, as well as realizing that like I have, I know just enough to know I don't know enough. Net result, I keep looking for answers. Okay. Now, is it possible to shift, therefore, from one side of the universe to the other side of your own volition? The answer is yes. Can I do it? No, not yet. Okay. But I have defied the odds on virtually everything I know of, not the least of which was getting diagnosed dead and shipped off to the morgue. I didn't agree, so I left. Okay, well, thank you so much, Gosan. Myself, I never got past grade 8. As a matter of fact, in grade 8, they threw me out of both chemistry and biology. Okay, because I wasn't operating normally, if you will. Essentially, Alpha. Like Alpha's just asked, if someone could bend space-time, what you would see is exactly what these UAPs are doing. We're looking at them like in a fast motion, but when you're inside your own bubble, you don't move fast at all, which is very true. Once you can actually see, like when I look at people, I literally see the echo behind them. Okay. I used to go down to the skateboard park and watch the skaters, not to see what they were doing in the physical world, but to watch the interaction of that echo behind them. Okay. You can also, once you learn how to get your eyes to work properly, in my eyes properly, it's more to the point to a more efficient fashion. Okay, you can see the shockwave they're creating ahead of them. And this is why when you're looking at the off-world, at the alien craft, the off-world craft, what you quite often see is just essentially a pixel. You're just seeing a flash picture of where they are. Okay. And you've been there, done that. It's an absolute... the funny thing about it, from my standpoint, is this. Okay, when I talk about it all being connected, I am literally referring to, once you understand that we are simply talking one molecule to the next molecule. Once you do that, okay, then you realize that healing rates can be increased. Okay, that they can be brought up to speed at a decent level. But we have to realize that that is done by accepting the fact it's possible. Okay. Good afternoon, Nicole. Glad you could make it. Most of us are taught that you cannot accelerate healing. It will take, the doctor says you're looking at 6 to 8 weeks to heal a broken bone. Minimum 6 to 8 months usually. Okay. And I don't think you can see it, but I've got a scar right there. Okay. That broke my arm back in 2004 to the point that they had to bolt it. Now, here's the silly part about it. I was told I would be 4 to 6 months before it even started to heal because of the way I broke it. Now, what they weren't counting on was me understanding that that's not acceptable. Okay. In my case, I took that bone, completely broken, and healed the bone in 9 days. Now, the reality is, if I can do that, you can do it. I don't recommend testing it. As a matter of fact, I recommend avoiding testing it altogether. Okay. There was a saying that was said long, long ago that said, all that I do, thou shalt do, and more. Okay. The reality is, I have lived a life that is absolutely bizarre. Okay. Can it be done? Can it be replicated? Certainly, but I wouldn't recommend it. Okay. When we're looking at the OTE drive, the oscillodentification of the tritransempation equipolarity, and understand that particular term. A number of years ago, I was listening to a podcast, like to a live internet radio broadcast. The guy claimed to be an expert in alien technology. And I looked at, so I didn't say a word. I was in the audience. I was just listening. Okay. Now, people have told me I'm an expert, and I'll flat out deny it. I'm not. I do not know enough. Okay. But this guy claimed that he was. And somebody in the audience turned around and goes, well, why is it we can see the little ships and nobody seems to see the big ones? Right. Well, the guest did the worst thing possible on radio. He laughed. He sat there for a good 15, 20 seconds, maybe longer. I don't know. But the host let it sit there as well. We had absolute dead silence on the radio, on the show. And finally, the guy comes back and goes, I don't know. Right. Well, I figured it was a reasonable question. And since the guy had already said he didn't know, I just typed in that word into the chat room, and I literally wrote. I said, once you understand the oscillodentification of the tritransempation equipolarity, it's easy, but you got to remember to take the fractal inversion into consideration to make it work right. To slow the system down. So somebody in the chat room turned around and asked me, is that even a real word? I says, yeah, it's a real word. It's just not common. She goes, can you explain it? I said, certainly, but in deference to the show, I will not explain it here. Okay. So I says, PM me and I'll be happy to explain it. I spent 2 hours on the horn with her explaining it. And by the time I was done, she understood it to a degree. And she goes, yeah, but can you eat the most bacon there, Black? By the end of it, she goes, I can understand what you're talking about, but how much education do you actually have? I says, well, I successfully failed college, right? She says, you're talking about this as though it's common sense, right? She says, I've got my master's in both rocketry and astrophysics, and we barely touch on the possibility of this. Okay, but you're talking about it like it's just common knowledge. For me, that's a normal drawback. I don't have the training or the research or any of that in this time frame, in this lifetime. I just don't. Okay. And from what I've understood, from what I've come to understand from the people teaching it, they're clearly not teaching all the idiosyncrasies of it, which is probably a good thing. Okay. The nice little problem about the nice little thing where it comes to life. Okay. The thing that I found where it comes to actual life is people do not What they're taught is this is impossible. I came up with this other little philosophy. I'm possible. You're apparently not able to walk out of the morgue. Apparently, when you die, that's just where the door ends, where the corporeal life ends. Sorry to say, or actually happy to say, for me, that never was the working way of it. Okay. Now, somebody sent me a picture, and I don't have it right handy. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure where it is on my computer. If you give me a biomagnetic flux holographic interface, I can make the thing sing and dance. Give me a binary output, I've got a problem. Okay. Quite often, for those of you that are looking to spot UFOs, quite often it's not what you see, but what you don't see that matters. For instance, if you're looking at a starless sky, or not a starless sky, rather a cloudless sky, and you see all these stars up there, okay, and you've got a spot. Let's just say, here's your ship, okay. Now, here's your stars all here, okay. Matter of fact, let's do that the other way. Here's your star, and here's your ship. Now, what you'll see happen is the ship moves along and blocks out, so you can't see the star for a moment, and then the star winks back into existence. Now, if you're watching and a series of stationary points are all of a sudden winking out, and a few moments later coming back into view, you're looking at a UFO. There is something between you and that star. Now, the tricky part is that some of these people have technology that will take a picture of what they're seeing behind and project it onto the front side of their ship. Net result, they vanish totally. You will not see them at all. Okay, and that's the real catch to this whole thing where it comes to technology. These are things that mankind is already developing, by the way. In Japan, they use that same rudimentary technology to project what's in front of a semi. And don't take my word for it, look it up. They use that same technology on the front of a semi to take a picture of what they're approaching and broadcast it on their back door. This way, in Japan, the other drivers know when it's safe to pull out and pass. Modern technology is evolving nicely. Mankind is coming up with phenomenal ideas. See, and you're absolutely right there, Black. The reality of it is this, and I think it's the American military that goes, the difficult we're already doing. The impossible simply takes us a little longer. Okay. And that is the reality behind that, at least from my understanding. Absolutely there, Colson. When we're looking at the world, and this is why people talk about you've got to be either religious, you've got to believe in God, or you've got to believe in science. Bad news, people, they are connected. Okay, from my experience, faith, religion, is used to, or spirituality, if you will, is used to explain the inexplicable until modern science can come back to explain it. Okay, the amount of knowledge that was lost when the Library of Alexandria was destroyed was absolutely incalculable. Many of the things we're remembering how to do now, they used to do way back then. Okay, they use different components. Computers were built and are built off-world all the time using crystalline relays, not using metal wires. Okay, and the reason that works is because of the concept of one molecule to the next. You can send information on a sonic wave, as some of you know, aka radio waves. Radio waves are only a very, very slow vibratory rate. You can go into subquantum fields and get much further distance, much further communication. Now, somebody And this is very much the case. Although I will tell you the other thing about that, there's a lot of things we used to believe. Okay. And do understand one thing very, very critical here. Yes, mankind is evolving. Mankind is at a point right now where it is on the verge of either propelling itself to the next level or completely blowing itself back to the Stone Age. It's up to you guys. Okay. The one thing you gotta remember, Alpha, is and this applies to everybody out there. People only know as much as they permit themselves to recall. When you stop questioning, that's when you stop learning. That's when you stop remembering. And people have come to this world in all of its forms, okay, to remember who you are. The fact I remember many of my past lives is because of the fact that I chose not to forget them. Okay. And now I just go back through things. And yes, I still look for corroboration. Okay. When we start talking about, about the whole thing, I mean, Bill Gates made a brilliant comment. Okay. With his knowledge way, way, way back, he literally, and I'm hoping I'm getting this quote straight. Okay. So I'm just going to paraphrase it. But what he said at the beginning of his career, at the beginning of building computers, he said, mankind will never require more than 64K of memory in a computer. And he also made the comment several years later, he goes, boy, did I miss the mark on that. Okay, because we still are evolving. Mankind is still evolving, is still developing technology. But you got to remember, computers are based on the functionality of the human brain. Okay, the helicopter was based on the oak leaf. People learned to build dams based on what the beaver was up to and what various other animals were blocking, or simply nature. Okay, and this is why I look at it when people go, let's clear cut this section of wall because we have a mountainside because we want the view over the mountain, totally ignoring the side effect of that. How you doing, Ange? Glad you could make it. We are so caught up in how we can actually get things done faster. We're not looking at the reality of the side effect. Like another one of these neat little issues that has recently started to come up, recently within the last 2 or 3 years, is people are coming up with new and faster ways of losing weight. Take this little pill and it'll drop X amount of weight in X amount of time. Scientists have discovered that you no longer have to exercise or diet to drop your weight because that doesn't work. Take this little pill. Okay, it's a brilliant idea, and I'm not debating whether it works. But you got to remember, all that waste has to go through your other organs. And the added stress on your organs may create more problems. Oh, I don't know. It flew quite nicely. I don't, I have not looked into the science of any of this stuff from the past. Okay, I really haven't. Because the way I look at it, I'm not trying to replicate the past. From my end, I look at what we've got. What is the potentiality of it? Can we actually find a way to make this world work a little more in unison with each other? When people talk about one world government, about war and all of this, anything that creates a separation goes against peace. It goes against evolution, in all fairness. People say, oh, war is great for the economy. Bad news, people. People study easier when they're not worried about their school being blown up. They do better scientific work when they're not worried about a nuclear bomb landing on their lap. This is just the reality of it. Now, I was sent a picture of something one day, and the person asked me, they went, I don't understand this. This was a download. They sent me a picture and asked if I had any idea what it was. I looked at the thing and I went, yeah, I know exactly what it is. It happens to be one part of a matter relocation device, what you would know as a transporter. Okay, designed to literally break down a physical body, transport it to the other end of space, and reassemble it. Okay, and I says, this is what it's for, this is how it works. Because his problem was it was giving off, he could tell it was giving off some sort of energy, but he couldn't tell what. I looked at him and I said, well, you're not checking the magnetic spectrum. He goes, well, no, I was looking for electric. I said, don't look for magnetic. Right, because it was a magnetic resonance he was looking for. Now, if we look at the Manhattan Project, from what I gather, that was where they were working with magnetics in order to modify vibratory rates of things, and had absolutely disastrous results because they forgot to take into one small thing in consideration. Yes, they changed the vibratory rates so they could pass through. What they didn't change was the fact that the ocean was doing this. So the ship come up and all the people just fell through it. It was only a matter of a second or so, and all of a sudden they were stuck in bulkheads. Okay, now again, you don't have to believe this. Okay, I'm not here to convince, I'm not here to convince anybody that what I'm looking at is real. That's for you. Okay, I got asked one day on a radio show why you should believe me. The reality is, I can't give you an answer. My response to their question was really wrong. Okay, because my response to their question was, I says, what makes you think I care if you believe me? And the reality is, that's me. I will not lie to you to make you feel better. Okay, that's one thing I won't do. But this does not mean I'm perfect by any means. Okay, I listen to some of what I say, and I'm going, gee, you're sounding awful egocentric. Gee, you're sounding awful pig-headed. But, and, my own little brother told me one day, he goes, look, if you think you're always right, you'll never learn anything. And this is why, one of the reasons, because I agree with him in a sense. Okay, but this is why I tell people, look, from my experience, when I look at the only three laws I follow, be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. Those are the only three laws that I follow. But if you compare any of the laws, any of the guidelines you personally follow, okay, you'll find, as near as I have anyway, every one of those laws that you're following fit inside the three I follow. Now, the reality is, if you can find one that doesn't fit, by all means, tell me. Until then, I'm going with the three covers it all. I'm still actively looking for the laws that don't, or the belief structures that don't fit. Thus far, I have not found any. Okay, so when I'm talking about everything being connected, one of the best ways that I found for meditation, this is one of the reasons why I heal at the speed I do. Okay, if you concentrate and try this yourself, okay, if you concentrate, you can feel your heartbeat without putting your hand on your throat or your hand on your wrist. Just concentrate for a minute and you'll feel your heartbeat in your chest without putting your hand anywhere. Once you do that, track that pulse out as far as you can follow it. Now, for me, I can feel my pulse all the way from my fingertips to the tips of my toes. In all fairness, I can feel my pulse at the end of my hair. Now, as we know, hair does not actually have veins in it. Thank heavens. Because can you picture what would happen in a barber shop? Okay, or in a hairstylist when they cut your hair if there was actually veins going through it? So the reality of it is, what I'm sensing is not the actual blood coursing, but the shock wave it creates. which is why I can feel it at the tip of my hair. And I don't expect you to believe that. Okay, and that's the real kicker to it. I like cemeteries. It's funny. I was at a cemetery there, Joe, years ago. Okay, and I'm sitting there and watching, and I'll tell you, for a place that's full of dead people, it is one of the most active places, spiritually speaking, that you can hang around. Now, it is respectful to only walk on the ground between the graveyards. In all fairness, the ghosts don't care. Okay, but the people that buried them there, the people that are emotionally tied to these people, do care. So, out of respect for them, okay, don't walk on the gravesite. But walking between them has never been frowned upon. As a matter of fact, nobody even questions it. Okay, but when we look at technology, understand mankind works on technology based on its understanding of it. Okay, based on how electricity works, based on how water works. Okay, what they figured out is you can take the flow of water and you can create electricity out of it by configuring it right. They found the same thing with air. Okay, they found the same thing with heat, light. All of these things mankind has sorted out and is learning more as we go along. They found new and exciting ways to cool things down. The funny part there, YJ, a lot of the reason you'll find ghosts staying in the graveyard is because, first and foremost, many of them don't desire to come back down to earth yet. So they stay there. They're still emotionally, much as they're physically no longer connected to the body. They're emotionally connected to the people and to the people they left behind. And thereby, they stay in the graveyard where they were put. It's kind of like having an apartment. I'm going to wander around, do what I want, but I'll come back to my gravesite periodically in case somebody's dropped by for coffee. I think one of the funniest ones I saw was it was hilarious when we actually went and looked at the two different grave sites. A friend of mine had gone with me to the cemetery because he had said, I want to have one of these experiences that you talk about. I mean, sure, let's go down. So we sat there and he's watching, he says, and he goes, all of a sudden he points at one stone and he goes, I can feel something over there. But now it's gone. I says, yeah, but if you track it, it's traveling across the graveyard. Right. And I pointed him in the right direction. He reached out again and he could pick it up. He says, what's going on? I said, he's going over to visit his girlfriend. When we went and looked at the grave sites, we found out that the one gravesite belonged to a young man that was all of about 25 years old, and a young woman that died at the age of all of about 18. They were still very much attached. How we doing, Andrew? And say hi to Jess for me, if you would, please. Glad you could make it. Energy, and when we take a look at the human body, the physical body that you live in is a biomechanical construct. Okay. And it is the soul that operates that, what we call the soul. Okay, that operates that and sends signals to make it move as it can. Okay. There are limits to what the human body is capable of, but not as many as what mankind believes. Ironically, it's got just as many as what mankind believes. Because here's the reality, and I strongly recommend you do not take this to the extreme. Okay, if you believe that you're going to get ill, if you believe you're going to catch a cold because somebody in your neighborhood has a cold, you can bet your bottom dollar you'll develop that cold, even if you don't go anywhere near the person. Okay, I was told when I tore my leg apart that I would never walk. That I would be on a cane for the rest of my life. Well, I am on a cane, absolutely. But I was told I'd be on it from 12 on. I was only on a cane for about 3 weeks. And then only in my late 40s really got back to using it. Okay. One of the nice little details that we're looking at, okay, is that when you believe that things are possible, if you go, yes, everything that I'm being told is impossible, if you believe that, then you will stonewall yourself. Okay. I was told, as you probably were, that your eyesight will fail as you get older. Now, you know what the funny part is? If I go back to 2007, so we're talking 15 years ago, if I held my glasses right there, that close, I could not physically see them. Okay. Now, and I was told that would continue to get worse. But here's why it gets worse. Okay, now I am not a scientist. And because of that, I will readily defer to the scientists, to the medical professionals. Absolutely. So what I'm talking about is the way I see the world and how it is how it has worked for me. Okay, I came to understand two things. The physical eye shifts gears all the time. It makes micro modifications to its own configuration to handle light coming in at different angles all the time. Okay, but the moment you put a set of glasses in front of it, it makes that light go through at a static form, at a non-changing and absolutely concrete wavelength at a specific angle. So the moment you put your glasses on, you're locking the visibility to that one point. And if you're wearing the glasses, now do understand, okay, I've still got mine. As a matter of fact, I've got 2 pair. I use this set for working on the computer. I've got another set right here that I use for when I'm going driving. Okay, I strongly recommend the use of these, not because I believe they have to be there forever, but because I believe if I don't wear them, okay, somebody out there, possibly myself, is going to get hurt pretty badly if I'm driving. But we're taught, as you get older, your eyesight will fail. I'm living proof that that is not necessarily the case. Okay, because once I found the indicator that this doesn't have to remain this way, my eyesight started to improve to the point that where it comes to reading, as in holding a book in front of me, I now have 20/20 eyesight. Not for distance, just for reading. Okay, computer's throwing you for a loop though. Much as I do agree with you, Alpha, some super advanced aliens do, but here's one for you that was done by a human. There was a gentleman about 15, 20 years ago that went skydiving. And we are talking a human went skydiving, jumped out of the airplane, and his parachute, it was his 1,000th jump. And the way the event went is his buddy jumped out with him and was going to film this jump for him as a wedding gift. Well, the guy come down and his parachute candle completely wrapped itself up. So he cuts it loose and he deployed his emergency chute. And it candled. Okay, so of course the best man is filming this going, well, I guess this is going to be a eulogy instead of a celebration. I kid you not, this guy, he plummeted that 10,000 feet. Okay. And about 100 feet, probably 100 yards off the ground, maybe a little higher, started to all of a sudden, without the parachute, slowed down to land on the ground safely. Now, not only did he do that once, he did it twice. Then he went about getting it tested. That took a long time in and of itself. Heck, I could. That's great, Black. I'm 59 and I can't hit a target at 15 yards. Never mind 500. It was bad when I was growing up trying to play baseball. I'd be standing at the pitcher's mound at home plate, and while we were practicing, I'd try and throw a ball to first base. The guy on shortstop would catch it because I couldn't even get in the ballpark. Okay, but when we realize that what we're doing is buying into everything we're being told, that you cannot do these things. Okay, as long as you believe that it's not possible, you're going to barricade yourself. Aliens, there's no question, aliens and ancient races absolutely exist. Okay, ancient races, by the way, are things like your elfids, your dwarves, even your minotaurs, your goblins, your dryads, these things that people call mythological creatures or mythological entities are very much a real entity. Even your arboreans, your walking trees. We're told these are all a myth. But if you look at the pictures in Borneo, they have pictures of trees that literally are moving. These are things that are possible, that do happen. It used to be believed that mankind couldn't fly. I have memories from this lifetime, myself included, of people being able to physically fly by simply manipulating the energy around them. Yes, in all fairness, we're in a world, ants are another name for them. That'd be a Tolkien reference. Now I've learned that they call themselves arboreans. Found that out through Mother Earth herself, who you may know as Gaia, who you may know as Mother Nature. She told me her name is Itza. But people are taught to fear all of this. If it doesn't add up properly, if it doesn't match what we already believe, then it's evil. It's wrong. And we're taught to fear everything. Now fear is a useful thing. It stops kids from absolutely killing themselves while they're learning. But we have to stop fearing that which we don't understand. It's that propagated fear that has taught people that science cannot, you cannot modify things by touch. We're taught that magic does not exist. And that's just the real of it. Ultimately, Joe, can I do it right now? No. In all fairness, I've forgotten how, but the way you do it, in my case, I didn't know I couldn't. At the time, I was only 2 years old. This was confirmed by my father before he passed away. And of course, being as it was done on a military base in a MyLab environment, you can bet your bottom dollar finding proof of it is going to be a challenge. Now, I don't have the connections, and nor do I want the connections to go and prove it. I came to the conclusion that as long as I'm content with it, I can work with it. But flight itself really boils down to this. When you think in terms of gravity, most people consider gravity a draw. Where things are pulling you towards it. My experience says gravity is not a draw, but a push. And all you have to do there is modify your own energy output to push yourself away from the physical planet. But the problem with it is this. Not only are you striving to push your own limits, but you're striving to push against everybody who believes otherwise at the same time. That's where it becomes a complicated setup. And, the funny thing there, YJ, stick bugs stick bugs themselves are an insect. But there are plants that size that are arborean that will get up and move. Okay, and they move in such a way that people don't even think about it because they presume that the plants are non-mobile. And most plants are non-mobile. Okay, but not all of them by any means. Oh, I do love stupid things like this. And I understand this is a bot, and I still don't know what to do about the thing. Okay, because I don't need those kind of bots, and therefore I'm slowly figuring out how to do things like that. But the reality of it is, from my standpoint, I don't require them. Alpha, you're absolutely right. Off-worlders across the cosmos are watching mankind and watching this evolution. But the reason they're watching it is because it is rare to actually hit a civilization at our current point. Okay, where mankind is right on the verge. It is right on the verge of either propelling itself into the cosmic universe amongst all the other races, or blowing itself all the way back to the Stone Age. Okay, and here's the funny kicker to it. If that happens, if we permit that to happen, the people that follow the so-called pagan religions are going to be the ones that are going to land on their feet fastest and go, okay, I know where we're standing, let's move with this. Okay. Ultimately, you are right, YJ. Things are turning around. You want to see something really cute. If you go to Zeta Reticuli, you can find what you would call a Venus flytrap big enough to eat a human. Quite readily. I mean, if you think the animals on Earth in Canada are dangerous, you should try the plants over on Zeta. They're downright devastating. And even the sand darts that live in the atmosphere in the Swazian homeworld are absolutely devastating. But all of these things exist. Okay. People call it the imagination. You're just using your imagination. Well, the key to the higher senses is your imagination. Okay. People have to imagine it's possible to start working with it, which brings us around to that other thing called HARP. HARP is a first generation atmospheric generator. Now, yes, some of the people playing around with it are pulling some pretty silly stunts, trying to figure out how to make it work properly. Okay. Now, this is just simply one of the steps that has to happen. This is also why the off-worlders will not stop, and it will not stop nuclear energy from being developed. Okay, but again, it's simply a molecular interaction. Breathing, your heartbeat, the heart beating, that energy can produce enough of an impact to decimate. If you can learn to focus it, okay, the power in the pulse of your heart, in the beat of your heart, is enough to level a small building if you can figure out how to focus it. This is why when we take a look at the energy patterns, when you look at some of the superheroes and some of the comics, where people have energy projecting out of their hand to move things or knock holes in buildings or to throw people around. Now here's one for you just to take this right out of the science fiction world and right into your hands. Okay. Take your hands, put the palms towards each other, but separate them by, a quarter of an inch, a half an inch. Okay. And concentrate for just a moment. You'll feel some form of energy. Now, there's a lot of ways to describe it, but give it a shot. You'll feel something, between your hands. And there's a lot of ways to describe it. You might be feeling bubbles. You might be feeling pressure, maybe heat. Okay. When you concentrate on it, you can make it stronger. Okay. And as it gets stronger, pull your hands apart so you can still feel that energy. Okay. Now, I used to have my hands that close together. Now I can't get them far enough apart. Okay. This is simply moving energy that your body is generating, that every single molecule in existence, every single atom in existence generates. Okay. Yeah. Colson is just saying, written in the chat room here. I read a piece about HARP that said it was about shutting down missiles, hypersonic or nuclear or whatnot, that are heading back down into our atmosphere from low Earth orbit. That is one of the possible uses, absolutely. But HARP itself has so many more possible uses. Okay, the reality of it is the technology that mankind is developing can be used across the board for positive or negative. Okay, like you take a pair of glasses. These two lenses, these two lenses right here can be used for positive, constructive purposes to straighten out my eyesight. Okay, make it work a little better. Or they can be used for negative. Line them up in sequence and line them properly. You now have a laser. Okay, which can be used for medical, mining, or destruction. What people do with technology, with their own talents, with their own skills, is what makes it good or bad, not the technology itself. Okay. Yeah. Wish that were always the case. Some of them just go downright paranoid. Now, personally, I never, did I use marijuana when I was a kid? When I was a young adult? Yes. As a kid, never. Okay. Did I use cocaine as a young adult? Absolutely. But not once did I try mushrooms, acid, LSD, or any of the actual directly mind altering, and I certainly, methamphetamines weren't even part of the equation. But I learned how to see in those environments as a child before I even knew what drugs were for. Okay. Yeah, I will absolutely vouch for that, Alpha. The reality is when you're looking at psychic senses and the ability to see these interatomic or subatomic connections, these abilities are enhanced through trauma. Now, everybody is born with the ability to see them. Okay. But as we hit about the age of 5, most adults will tell the kids, oh, that's a wonderful imagination. Now it's time to grow up. And we learn to shut them down. I'm one of the really rare ones where Dad did not tell me to shut it down, although they tried. But what he did insist on was that I learned to keep my mouth shut. By the way, I failed in that. But anytime you have trauma, it opens that door a little wider to sense more. Now, in my case, I was clinically dead 4 times before I hit 10 years old, and 6 times at least since then, when a non-medical professional had to kick my heart back in, or it started of its own accord, take your pick. But every one of these traumas will bring stronger senses to bear. Okay. Now, when we're taking a look at matter relocation, very doable. We already know this. Okay. How do we know this? Because you can take a photograph, you can take a video, and take this physical form of projection and transfer it from my computer to your computer. Okay, so we know the matter can be transferred from one location to another in real time. What we cannot do, what nobody can do, is move backwards in time. You can look back and see what happened and use that as a gauge to figure out what's going on. Okay, to figure out what the outcome of your decisions were. Or we can turn around and we can look to the future and go, okay, I'd like to make that happen. So what is blocking that from happening? And the trick to that is look at the world around you, at the world you're personally living in, and ask yourself, what is not working in my favor? What is blocking me from attaining that goal? That would not be a surprise to me at all there, YJ, regarding the HARP stations. See, I do know for an absolute certainty, people talk about the International Space Stations. I know of 3 that are up there, okay, where the people that are currently at war with each other are working together in outer space to put things together up there. Now, ask yourself this, and, I listen to this all the time from people going, oh, that's a bad, those people are bad people because of their skin color. Realistically, aside from pigmentation, okay, obviously pigmentation makes them different. Cultural upbringing definitely makes them different. But when you look at the long and the short of it, no matter who people are, okay, no matter what race, what species, okay, when they're happy, they laugh. When they're mad, they get angry or they end up in tears. There's all sorts of ways of reacting it. When you're hungry, you look for something to eat. When you're thirsty, you look for something to drink. Every single individual I've ever talked to from any race desires to be recognized and respected for what they're capable of. Okay, they do not, nobody appreciates being put down. At least none that I've seen. Okay, what we came back to this world for, quite frankly, what everybody came back here for, is to remember who you are, what you are capable of. Now, I'm not talking about your intellect, okay? I'm talking about take all your component parts, all of your soulmates, your soul family, your star family, whatever you want to call it, okay? And here's the real neat kicker to it. We're all here looking for that, okay? Now, I started writing the Yldrbac Chronicles, and here's what most people don't realize about them. In the early books, okay, and then they'll be coming out, well, I've already got 2 of them out. And if you take a look at if you look below this video, you'll find a list of ways of getting a hold of me. If you look at rkeithandrews.com, my website, you'll see the different books, okay, that I've already got in print. Working on an Amazon page right now. Okay, but inside those books, I am starting to cover all of the things, how past lives work, how the soulmate came about, what it is, how you find it, how it is all brought together, and why it all works together. Okay. Well, and I will not argue that point. The funny thing is, Black, one of the complications here, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, alexithymia. Okay. When you're looking at emotions, try this one on for size. Instead of striving to understand all of them, work on 2. Fear and love. Fear will cause people, for whatever reason, to create a barrier between themselves and somebody else. Or they will use it to strive to control what somebody else is doing. Love will find a way to connect with them. The love energy is that which draws people together. The fear energy is what pushes everybody away. Now, I'm no stranger to fear. Half the reason I became reclusive is I could not understand people. Or maybe I did. I'm not entirely certain which. But I became very reclusive because I couldn't handle the amount of conflict I was picking up. Okay. See, now I appreciate that, YJ, because what you're talking about here, I knew of I've never looked up the names. The only one I know of that I knew the name of was the Mir space station. and that is a poster child. Okay, but the other ones are being run by a conglomeration of people from various different nations, where the nations down here are at war with each other. Okay, and it's absolutely ludicrous in my eyes. Okay, people say, why don't the off-worlders or God come down and wipe and solve the problem and put an end to it? Well, the reason God doesn't do it is you've got free will. You've got the choice. Whether or not it's socially acceptable or not is another issue. You've got the choice. Are you going to act, are you going to respond in a negative fashion or in a positive one to other people? Are you going to try and hurt people, or are you going to try and help them? This is your choice. Okay, now you were given free choice. What you weren't given was freedom from consequence. Now, this technology I was talking about earlier, that somebody put together, they sent me a picture of it and asked what it was. The matter relocator can be used for positive issue. It can be used to move from one location to another. But here's the danger. It can also be used to create absolute devastation. Because if you take that particular tool and use it to remove a chunk of property, a chunk of land from a given location, the cataclysmic side effect could be beyond calculation. Okay, why don't the off-worlders bring us the higher tech? Bring us the weapons to defeat our enemies. The reason being, mankind is way too volatile. That one, the best I can tell you there, as far as that goes, YJ, depends on what you call a moon. Okay, I only know of one that is in location at this point. Now, that, like I said, I do not know everything by any functional stretch. Okay, I do know that when Earth came into orbit, it was not the same size it is today. It was actually smaller when it came into orbit. Okay, and it's going to be fascinating over the next 500 to 1,000 years to find out that what mankind is working on is likely going to end up generating an atmosphere, a breathable atmosphere, on our current moon, the one that most people know about. Okay, now of course, I relegate myself, when I'm looking at a moon for a planet, I'm looking at the moon that is right there, visible from the land, from the ground of the planet it's supposed to be a moon on. Which is why I say I only know of one. Okay, there's all kinds of satellites moving around that are passing through this area. Absolutely. Okay, but am I going to sit here and tell people I absolutely believe there are definitively 2 or 3 moons up there? No. Okay, I will tell you, from practical experience, I will tell you this whole idea of the Earth is flat doesn't hold water for me. But that's not based on science, technically. That's based on the fact that I've been in orbit, I've seen it. Now, you get to decide whether or not that's real. But when we look at the connection between them and the atoms, okay. Yeah, I know how that feels, Joe. This is why I don't leave the house much. When we look at the space between the atoms, okay, the reality of it is you've got an atom here and an atom here, and then all this space in between. Now, can I give you measurements of space? No, not a prayer. I don't have the mathematical background or the training this lifetime to do so. But I can tell you that it's there. And in time, the scientists will figure it out. Okay. I think the flat Earth took hold a long time before that, YJ. I've talked to people that still believe that the Earth is absolutely flat. But I did see on Facebook an absolute argument that was comical as heck. This person said the earth can't possibly be flat. With so many cats on it, there would be nothing left on the shelf. You know, so when we're looking at it, like all of these things are connected. Once you realize that nerves in your body can heal, okay, can be reprogrammed. And this has been proven, by the way. Okay, scientists have already proven this is possible. That you can actually turn around and reprogram the cells in your body by simply focusing on them. Now, do understand this is done in tandem with modern medicine or with herbological or naturopathic medicine. This is done in addition to. It is not a replacement method. Okay. I love it, world. Hermits unite separately in your own home. Let's go for coffee. You go to your coffee pot, I'll grab mine. Okay. But the reality is, we have to realize that communication is the key, but most people are being taught to ignore that. Most people are taught that we can't get along because that's a different culture. We'll never be accepted. Okay. And, granted, people still think I'm completely off kilter. But it's like I tell people, I make every single individual I ever meet happy. Some of them by showing up, most of them by leaving. Okay. But you got to remember that whatever your walk in life, okay, especially from my standpoint, it doesn't matter somebody's age, their income bracket, what their religion, none of it matters. Okay. I'm still going to treat people absolutely as equals. I'm going to treat them all the same way. Okay. I will speak in the same pattern to you as I will to a 4-year-old. Now, granted, I will adjust my vocabulary if somebody's not getting it. I absolutely will adjust my vocabulary in order for them to understand it. And I'm absolutely certain I will upset some people by doing that. Well, I tried that one day and I ended up wet. Nightmare says here, prove the earth is flat, walk off the edge. I did. Did not make me happy. Walked off the edge of the dock and ended up in the water. I'll tell you, swimming in a mountain lake at the beginning of March is a bad idea, even if you are a kid. Okay. Most people are taught to ignore what, simple observation, absolutely, empirical evidence. Now, on my father's deathbed, he flat out told me that every single memory I have, and he itemized it as, your past life, your psychic phenomenon, your paranormal experiences, your trips with my lab, the abductions, all of it is real. Okay. And, this is something that sat there that he had spent his life trying to convince me I was off my nut. See, when it comes to motion sickness, Joe, I had an interesting situation. I had motion sickness down to a fine art. Up until I was about 10 years old, my parents, I guess up until I was about 5, my parents would pick me up, put me in the car, get me strapped in, and it was even worse when I was only 2. They'd get me all locked into place. I'd throw up. They'd clean me up, put me back in the car, then they'd start the car. Like I said, I had motion sickness down to a fine art. And one of the things we have to realize here is when I talk about everything being connected, okay, I found out through recent observation as well as I found documentation on it that showed that corroborated what I'd already believed. The optic nerve, what most people see, okay, the information we're told comes in through the eye. Gets swapped around, then you sort it out. What they're not told is you pull in just as much information through the cerebral cortex. The concept of having eyes in the back of your head is because the nerves back here work like an optic nerve as well. Okay, or more to the point, can, when you permit it to happen. Now, am I in the process? I decided I was going to start actually working on the documentation for the OTE drive. And again, I work in what you would call theoretics. Okay, because of the fact I don't have the scientific training to do otherwise. Okay, because of that, I turn around and go, okay, this is what I know can happen. Now, you guys that have the mathematical backgrounds or the magnetic backgrounds, you guys figure out how to recalibrate it or how to replicate it. You know, that's just the way I have to work. I can tell you from my experience, from my senses, what I know is possible. Okay, but it's up to you guys to implement it, to figure out how to replicate it. Okay, because I will tell you this. Unlike that one African shaman that I heard about. Okay, I heard about this African shaman that said he had so much control over the energy around him. He was absolutely so far advanced. He was bulletproof. Okay, and he was so convinced and had his tribe convinced to the point that they brought a guy in that was willing to do it. Okay, and the guy comes in with a gun, points it at this shaman who had said, I'm absolutely invulnerable to bullets. This is how connected to my higher power that I am. So the guy gets there and waited for the shaman to go, okay, I'm ready. And the guy pulled the trigger. They buried the shaman. I am not that far ahead of anybody. Okay. Am I a firm believer that whatever illness I come up with, whatever obstacle I run into, that I will find a way to get around? Certainly. But am I going to stand here and tell you, go ahead and shoot me because I'm immune? No. Just not that interested in the pain. Now, in all fairness, this lifetime I haven't been shot. Thank you very much. Let's keep it that way. But when we take a look at the mechanical wonders that people are coming up with and the scientific breakthroughs that are being made, let us understand mankind is responsible for most of this. Okay. They really are. Yes, they have taken guidelines, but the off-worlders will not, it's actually against their doctrine. They will not give advanced weaponry to mankind because mankind is way too volatile for its own safety. Okay, but they are quite willing to work with communication, with talking to them about sociology and about unifying the species, not the race. Races is not the problem. Skin color is not the problem. Perception and being taught fear is the problem. Okay, and mankind's curiosity streak is something bizarre. But when we realize that you can actually modify, and I know this works because I've done it, okay, with my own energy patterns, when I get agitated, I will interrupt electrical circuits. Okay, this is not something I have control over. It's simply something that works, that happens. Bad news, world. We already have what you would call blasters. There are in existence sonic weapons that will knock somebody out like that, and sonic weapons that will kill somebody in a heartbeat, literally. Flick a switch and it'll kill everybody in the stadium. Mankind already has these. Mankind already has laser weapons and plasma weapons. They've already got them. Thankfully, they're still working on them from a experimental level at this point, or from larger versions. Okay, they've already got an accelerator cannon, a railgun. Okay, problem with the railgun is it's so big right now because they haven't lowered it, they haven't improved technology to the point of being able to do it. It is, I think, if I remember correctly, the railgun they have is something like 26 miles long. Pretty much useless as far as a weapon goes, because you have to wait for the earth to turn to be able to shoot anything. You know, that's the reality. You know, and from that standpoint, we really have to take a look at the way life is running and go, okay, technology, give mankind, give your neighbor credit for actually having a brain. Now, yes, you will hear me if you're ever around me, you will hear me refer to people as being stupid. Now, understand, that's a terribly derogatory term for most people, but understand, stupid, in my opinion, is if you know better than to do something and you do it anyway. This is just plain stupid. If you don't know better for whatever reason, you haven't got the message, then it is true ignorance. And I got all the tolerance in the world for ignorance. Stupidity, not so much. Okay. Joe, it depends on your definition. Okay. Here's where we're running into the problem. Joe just asked, he goes, I'm going out on a limb here, but are there bad Catholic priests? Here's the easiest way to find out if it's a functional one. Now, do understand, I personally see myself as a Christian because I do believe in God and I do believe in Jesus. Okay. But if you want to find out if a Catholic priest is on the right track, ask him directly. Did God create everything? If he says yes, this is fantastic. That's a good start. But then ask him the follow-up. Okay, did God create evil? If he comes back with no, you're not talking to the right one. You might want to find a different priest to talk to. Because the reality of it is this. If he created everything, then he had to create evil. Okay. And I'm thinking and I could go down that rabbit hole in a real hurry. I've fought with the idea for quite literally a couple of years now. In all fairness, world, I'm not sure of the term the Como kind of priest. You know, so unless you can give me something to work with there, I don't honestly have an answer for you. What I can tell, like, I've thought about tangling with this whole concept of religion. Okay. Because do I believe, like I said, do I believe in God? By whatever name you want to call him, the answer is absolutely yes. Do I believe in Christ? Probably more so than most people I know. But, you know, am I necessarily going to tangle with it? That depends on you guys. Okay. Oh, okay. Not a problem there, world. With that in mind, we're just going to have to leave that as I haven't got a clue. Okay. But there are things on YouTube, there are things that I will say, you know, that I will absolutely answer. Like, for instance, there are things that I will not say on my own channel. Okay. But if I end up doing an interview on somebody else's and I get asked a question, heads up, I will be honest. There are certain questions I won't answer. Okay, but I'll tell you why I won't answer them if I'm asked them. Okay, but when we take a look at technology itself, I like the way it was put, and I think it was Einstein that said it, that when you push technology to its ultimate level, there is little difference between it and magic. Okay, and I'm a firm believer. I've seen things done. In reality, I've seen things done. I've got a lot of circumstantial evidence that points in one direction. My older brother, before he passed away, told me the memories I was working with. He told me this in front of my father. He goes, look, he says, what you're talking about is past life memories. He goes, in today's world, there is no way you're going to get proof of them. He says, so you have to settle for circumstantial evidence. And then he goes on to say, you've got enough circumstantial evidence for your past lives, for the ones you're talking about, to convict somebody. And he says, understand, circumstantial is what the police use to convict somebody or find them innocent in lieu of actual physical evidence. He says, there is enough circumstantial evidence you laid out before me just now to convict somebody of murdering someone where the victim died 100 years before the accused was born. So I says, okay, so what do I do with that? He goes, well, my recommendation would be live your life as though your memories are absolutely on mark. But keep an eye out for that one piece of information that derails the whole 9 yards. Okay. And this is where I've ended up standing. Why I ended up in front of on the YouTube, I don't rightly know. Okay. It wasn't like I went this direction intentionally. It kind of worked out that way. And in all fairness, I can really say a lot of that has to do with the fact that people turned around, okay, and people on Spaced Out Radio, when I was talking to on the ET Connection, so many people asked me to come online that, and to start and go on video. Well, net result, here I am. Okay. And the nice little part about it, from my standpoint, is this. Okay. This works out really well for me. I'm looking at right now, I'm starting today to actually document the notes, if you will, for the OTE drive. Okay. Can I put it down in scientific terms? Not a snowball's prayer. I don't have them from this lifetime. Okay. But I am going to be documenting that little item. I'm also going to be documenting, putting the notes together for the teleporter or transporter, whatever you want to call it. Okay. These are all theoretical. I do not have the scientific wherewithal. But I will show you this. Okay, and this is all tied together. Okay. This series, of course, that I've talked to you about before. In these pages, I will be throwing in the information on a lot of this. Okay, not only does it give you the storyline, but it also gives you the social impact of various races. Okay. I appreciate that, Constance. Well, yeah, I mean, the easiest way I can put it in Cousin is my life is more science fiction than anything else. Okay, and I don't have a way of putting it into practical terms other than that side of it. But the one thing I do know is that I am striving to get the information out. I've been asked by a lot of people to put the information in written form. So right now, on my one website, on keithandrews.com, I've got 7 books listed there that I've already got in print. Okay, I'm in the middle of putting an Amazon channel together, an Amazon store together. I think it's an Amazon store. I'm honestly not certain, but I'm pretty certain it's an Amazon store that is being built for me. Okay. Oh, I will not argue with you guys there. Empathy is the most underrated ability of all of the metaphysical abilities out there, in my opinion, of all the senses out there. Okay. Because you physically pick up what other people feel. Now, in my case, I don't only pick up what the people feel. I pick up what the plants are feeling, the animals, the earth itself. Okay. All of these things I get bombarded with, and it doesn't shut down. As any true empath knows, it's not like you go, oh, I don't want to feel it anymore. You get stuck with it. Once your senses are open, you have them. It's kind of like you've got your eyes open going, I don't want to see anything with my left eye, so I'm just going to shut it off. It doesn't work that way. You can learn to focus past it. Okay, and much of what I'm working on is stuff I've learned how to focus past or how to put to use. Do I teach people how to do this? Absolutely. Okay, but we have to realize that it's all literally interconnected. Now, that neat little trick that I showed you a little earlier, where you take your hands and you put them hands towards each other, you can do the same thing. Now, understand, energy runs both directions at the same time. So once you can feel that, your next step after that, after you can separate your hands a little, do it with friends. Okay, and all you do is you put your hands, one hand towards the other. Whether it's face to face or whether it's this way, doesn't matter. You're looking at the connection happening. Okay. And you can build a much stronger energy field. Okay. By working together, by completing that circuit. It's kind of like batteries put one next to the other, cascade batteries. You'll build more and more juice in the circuit as you go along. We do this all the time with internet. Okay, when we look to the dinosaurs, many of the dinosaurs had more than one brain. Okay, many of the humans I know sometimes seem to have less than one, but we'll see. We'll figure out how that goes. But what we have to realize is the same thing I have told people for decades. Okay, quite literally. Okay, only in the last, realistically, since March 6th of 2020. No, 2021, I think. Yeah, March 6th of 2021, when I came online here. I've been telling people that absolutely, working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Yeah, the good news there, Joe, is you don't actually have to be a medium to be an empath. In my case, I'm both. Now, I really appreciate you guys coming here. And coming to join me today. I absolutely appreciate it. But my throat's starting to seize. I've been here for 2 hours now. So I'm going to have to call it a night. But until we talk again, thanks so much again for joining me. Until we talk again, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.